How's it going, everybody? Mr. Holton here, and PlayStation just dropped a brand new showcase for Crimson Desert, and it's showing a lot of things that, well, I had been waiting for to get properly excited for this game, because I was one of the people that were kind of questioning this release for a while because I wasn't sure how deep this was going to be, but man, they are not holding back on stuff to do in this game. So let's go over this game, or let's go over this showcase, and yeah, I'll try to look into as much as I can. Also, timestamps are below. So first off, in case you don't know about Crimson Desert, this is a game that has been in development by Pearl Abyss, which are the creators for the MMO Black Desert Online. Now, I've talked about Black Desert Online before. I think it's a pretty enjoyable MMO, which has great, honestly, really amazing combat, but it has its weaknesses like the story and dialogue and things like that, and you know, some of the grindiness. But generally speaking, I would say that I enjoy Black Desert Online, and Crimson Desert is their first outing into a single-player game, and this is going to be a fully fledged AAA product. I'm not going to lie, this is not a small game by any means, but let's go into the story for a bit here. So the story is about Kliff. You are going to be playing as Kliff most of the time, and we'll get to that in a moment. And he's the protagonist, and his clan, the Greymanes, are getting split up after a big event, and it's up to us, or well, Kliff, to find his old teammates. And apparently their home is called Pywel, and it's during this aforementioned battle that their great leader of Pywel is killed, and so a war is raging between a faction called the Black Bears and the Greymanes. So that is essentially how the game starts, but it's gonna evolve into something completely different where Kliff takes on a bigger destiny than he had imagined from the start. However, speaking about his old companions, they have now confirmed that you will be able to play as 2 more characters in the game. And it's not just playing as them for a little bit for certain missions. You will be playing these characters if you want to freely and explore the world, aside from the main mission, that is. So you will be able to play as 2 additional characters, and these 2 is a woman who uses a big-ass 2-handed sword. We don't know yet if she can use other weapons, but she has that, and then she has a pistol for, you know, of course, ranged combat. And then we have a orcish-looking companion who uses a battle axe, and uses it very effectively, and he has this big-ass hand cannon that blasts enemies away. Also, it would seem that the female companion, she has a blink ability that lets her teleport away from enemies, which looks really cool. Also, the female companion seems to be named Naira. I'm not sure here, but that seems to be what Kliff calls her in the trailer. Now, while we're talking about the characters here, it would seem that there is some form of customization, at least for Kliff. We don't know yet in case you can switch outfits and weapons and things like that for the other 2 companions, but I would think you would be able to, considering you will be able to use them a lot during, like, you know, free exploration and things like that. So if you want to play as the female for most of the exploration parts of the game, which is going to be many, many hours, like most of the hours you're going to play are going to be exploration, I would assume that there's going to be some form of customization, but take that with a grain of salt because that's just me guessing here. At any rate, we know that Kliff has some form of outfit customization because he's swapping up his outfits left and right in these showcases. So hey, at least you have that. Now, speaking of exploration, the open world here is massive. It's apparently been reported to be bigger than Red Dead Redemption 2, which is a pretty massive game. Remember also, a lot of this game will be spent on horseback, probably not on the dragon and the mech that we see later on. Most of it's going to be on horseback or just Kliff exploring the world, you know, by using his glider and things like that. So it'll be definitely huge in terms of exploration, because, you know, you're not driving everywhere like in GTA, so you don't like have a car in that way where you can just drive really quickly to somewhere or fly with like a jet plane. There will be a dragon, of course, but the question is, you know, how fast that is. At any rate, the world is absolutely huge. We have several biomes. We have green pastures, snowy landscapes, deserts, technological cities, and floating structures. And apparently there's 5 regions to explore altogether, which is pretty pretty insane in of itself. We have Hernand, we have Pyloon, we have Demonis, Delicia, and the Crimson Desert itself. So that's a huge amount of regions that you're going to be able to explore. It would have been big enough if you just had 2 or 3 regions, right? But 5? Oh my god, there's going to be a lot of stuff to find. We're going to keep talking about exploration here, by the way. All of these regions will have handcrafted side quests, encounters, challenges, treasures, and so on, and you are free to take them on how you choose to. Also, there will be many factions battling each other and vying for power, so expect a lot of big-ass battles, reclaiming fortresses and fighting huge enemies, because there will be an absolute monstrous amount of boss battles. We see tons of clips here where you run into unique and dangerous-looking individuals. And speaking of factions, we can see a window saying Hernandian contribution here, which levels up after a completed quest. So you'll be leveling your reputation with regions as well, most likely. Now, doing this will, of course, unlock a lot of goodies. For example, you will unlock new merchants to get new equipment and weapons and, other ingredients that you'll be needing for the main quest to sort of rebuild your clan again. So it sounds like the side quests and a lot of the side activities are intrinsically tied to the main stories. I kind of like that. Also, you can see the weather to the bottom left of the screen, including degrees and wind strength, and I do wonder if that'll come into play during moment-to-moment gameplay. I'm guessing it's going to come into play when it comes to flying with maybe the dragon or the glider, and depending on the wind strength, maybe it's going to push Kliff further along, the more, the wind howls, or, if the temperature is going to dry him out and things like that. Hopefully there's mechanics like that too. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't really caught up to every single detail because there's so many things that this game is going to be providing. And it's just in sheer terms of activities to do, there's just so much already and so many details to keep track of. Now, again, speaking of wind, we can see Kliff using some form of wind power that pushes him horizontally and vertically, as well as him using a glider, of course, and a grappling hook to traverse. The combinations are pretty slick looking and seem to be fun to pull off. And if you don't want to use them, you can just climb mountains and walls like Breath of the Wild style. So, hey, that's pretty cool. Also, while out exploring, you'll of course find tons of treasures and treasure maps and other cool things like optional and secret areas, like this place hidden behind a bookshelf. Essentially, they'll be throwing you into the ultimate open world, and they essentially want you to be curious all the time, to go off the beaten path all the time. And so far from what I've seen here, it seems like they're gonna be pretty successful with that, because there's a lot of things when they're out showing, the maps and showing the environments where you can see small things that just, pokes out a little bit out of the environment, and you're like, I want to go there and check that out. What could that be? Because, that's going to be me the entire time. I'm not going to be able to focus on doing the main quest. Now, we're going to talk about these islands in the skies, and this is apparently called the Abyss, and will be some sort of endgame zone. And apparently it's parts of the Abyss that's falling down to the lands below, which is causing power imbalances and a lot of instability, hence the sieges and total war going on across Pywel. So now we have a better idea of what the hell is going on in this game. So apparently, again, the Abyss is dropping parts of technology and things like that provide people with power. Apparently the Abyss has a lot of its own challenges, and it reminds me a lot of the Sky Islands in Tears of the Kingdom, and well, that's not really a surprise since the modern Zelda games have definitely had some influence on this game. I mean, it's pretty obvious just looking at all the design aspects. I have no problem with that. Also, I love how Kliff holds out his sword with this juicy swish sound to find parts of the Abyss around the map.
Borders spilling into the lands of Pywel.
Speaking of which, these Abyss parts are important and will likely come into play in the Sky region itself to unlock new skills and abilities. And there are other activities to do as well aside from exploring, like fishing. Now, again, I was one of those who wasn't particularly super hyped for this game before. I'm still trying to keep my expectations in check because, again, some of their strengths, Pearl Abyss, that is, has been combat and gameplay, but not necessarily so much story, dialogue, and things like that. So I'm really, really hoping that they can pull this off in general, just to make you feel that connection with this world. I think that is so incredibly important with games like this, in that when you have a huge open world, you also have to have a story and characters and a connection to, like an emotional connection sort of to this game. So it's not just a big playground. It is, but having that connection makes you actually care about exploring the world. You see what I'm trying to say here? That's always a big thing for me. Now, all this said, as excited as I'm starting to get, I have to bring up some negatives here that I've noticed. It's not much, and I think they can fix most of this until launch, but I gotta bring them up either way. The graphics look pretty good, but I am noticing that some models look a little dated. For example, I think there was this troll or orc king that's sitting down somewhere in the footage, and it looks very much like an old Black Desert Online model. So some of the sections of this showcase doesn't look as good as some others, and I wonder if that has to do with the fact that the game is so huge and so much will have to be rendered at all times. So maybe that is the reason for why some of the models and some of the textures just don't look as good in certain moments. Also, there's tons of particle effects, and I'm hoping that it doesn't get too grating and annoying to look at the, constant amount of particle effects all the time when you're fighting, because that, as you may know, like some particle effects can just be too much when you're just constantly fighting and you're just seeing sparkles everywhere whenever you use your sword, which it can get a bit much. Some lip syncing and facial animations look a little wonky, as I mentioned, with that orc character or this troll character or whatever he is. Again, they might have time to polish it, but again, there was, for example, one of the companions that is talking to Kliff early on. We see him saying something, and then it doesn't really measure up with his mouth, so I wonder if that is just a translation thing going on there. I'm not sure what's going on there, but just, lip sync issues in general. I did also notice that normal enemies tend to go down pretty quickly in the footage, so I hope it's not going to be like Black Desert where enemies just get cut down like grass, because if you've played Black Desert Online, as much as the combat is great and it feels really good, a lot of the trash mobs and a lot of the mobs you find in the world, they just die instantly. Well, up until you reach like level 50, 60. When you get up to the higher levels, they start putting up some more resistance. But a lot of the time, you will be like playing many hours just cutting down enemies like no problem at all. And I hope that there is some form of difficulty to these enemies, that they don't just, fall over immediately. There is, for example, one enemy we see here that seems to put up a fight by, blocking Kliff's strikes and things like that. And I hope there's a lot of that stuff, so you have to figure out your enemies. Also, the bosses, however, look really cool, and they seem to be pretty difficult and seem like they put up a challenge, so I'm looking forward to that for sure. But again, the enemies, I hope it's not just, that they die instantly, because that is just going to remove a lot of the, the point of the combat, really, right? Because this combat system seems to be fairly complicated in the sort of same degree like Black Desert Online, more so even because of all the combinations and things you'll be able to do. And now that you also have two other playable characters, for example, the female and the orc dude, so they're going to have their own combinations, their own fighting styles to remember. So, it's like a ballet, right? You want to be able to control your character, but you also want sufficiently powerful enemies that don't just go down instantly, so you can have some fun with the combat. At any rate, I would say that Crimson Desert Online is looking better and better the more I see of it, and I'm glad they actually revealed a lot of this information now. For example, the fact that you can play as several characters and you can explore the world freely with his two other companions. That is a huge factor that I think will be introducing tons of replayability for this game, or a lot more hours at least, because playing as Kliff for the entire game might turn out to be a little repetitive. So I'm really glad they revealed this, because this made me really, yeah, okay. Now we're getting there. Now we're getting there. Also, the amount of things you can find and do, and how you can explore the world and things like that, and that there seems to be a strong, at least what they consider a strong start to the game, and that there is a strong story or a plot element. I just hope that they can follow all the way through. But yeah, let me know what you think about Crimson Desert Online in the comments below, guys. Are you excited for this one? I'm getting pretty excited for it, I'm not gonna lie. Also, for future coverage of Crimson Desert, don't forget to subscribe to the channel because I will be covering this game the more we learn about it and up until launch. Also, thank you to my wonderful Ensvin Squad members for supporting the channel over on Patreon and here on YouTube. You guys are awesome. This has been Mr. Alton, signing off.